Hey guys, Mr. Muscato with you again. Today we're going to take a look at the Distortion and Repetition Project. In this project, we are going to have two objects. One of them will distort and come back together, and then a second one will break apart and then come back together. If you take a look at Blackboard underneath the Distortion and Repetition content folder, all right, you'll see a version of this particular file. All right, so this project, as you can see, all right, one object distorts, the other object breaks apart, and then they come back together. All right, all of this sits on a background layer, a static background. So we're going to need at least 3 layers to accomplish this. All right, so let's take a look at Flash and see how this project gets put together. All right, so as with all things Flash in this class, we're going to create a new ActionScript 3.0 file. And the first thing that I will do is I will create the object that I'm going to distort. We can do it again. We can do it in any order that we want. We can create the background first. We can create the object that breaks apart first. We can create the distortion object first. I like to do the harder bits of it first, or the more tedious bits of it first. All right, so I'm going to create the distortion object. What you want to distort is up to you. Okay, I'm going to select, let's see here. All right, so I'm going to create something, a blue rectangle that I'm going to distort over 25 frames. Even though the project is 50 frames long, I'm only going to need 25 frames worth of keyframes that I create, and we'll see why in a moment. Okay. All right. So as we discussed in class, the selection tool, the black arrow up in the upper right-hand corner of your toolbox, is not just a selector. It can also be used as a distorter. It can also be used to select just sub-pieces of an unprotected object. All right. So to use the object as a distorter, the selection tool as a distorter, the way it works is that we want to deselect everything first. All right, so to do that, we just kind of left click out in space somewhere, and you'll notice that the once selected object, all right, the rectangle that I just drew, which is a primitive object, once I left click out in space, it deselects everything. To use the selection tool as a distorter, you will approach the edges, the borders of the object, and you'll see that you get a little arc, all right, underneath the arrow. All right, that means that at this point, the object, the selection tool can be used as a distorter. Okay, so you can see that as we click and pull this stroke away from this rectangle, all right, and then release, that the object has been distorted. The rectangle has been distorted. Okay, also you can see that the fill inside of the rectangle, all right, fills in the new area. So that's what a fill does, is it continues to fill in the enclosed area of an object. All right, I'm going to Command Z that, Control Z that, undo that. All right, so I want my animation. All right, so again, we're creating a 50 frame animation. Half of it is going to be the object distorting, and then the other half is going to be the object undistorting, or coming back to its original position. So for that to happen, all right, I'm going to need a series of keyframes. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to press the F6 key. All right, again, remember the Mac kids. All right, you are FN F6. All right, so I've created a second keyframe. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and start to distort this object. Again, this is frame by frame animation. We want subtle changes to our object. We don't want to make big sweeping changes all at once. All right, so again, that's frame 1, that's frame 2. Okay, F6. All right, we're going to distort some more. We're going to start to get some different actions here. All right, as the object starts to kind of change form and morph. All right, F6 again. All right, and we're going to start to create different movements, if you will. All right, based on where and how we drag this thing. All right, so far we have this happening. Okay, F6 again. All right, pulling the object again. Again, I'm looking for the arc to appear underneath the selection tool as I approach the object. All right, and I'm only dealing with the borders themselves. All right, F6 again. All right, so at this point, I'm going to speed up the video a little bit, and then we will come back when I'm done with my 25 frames. All right, so all I'm doing is pressing F6, distorting, pressing F6, and distorting. All right, so we'll speed up the video at this point. All right, so there we go. We have 25 frames. All right, if I hit enter, I can kind of see how the object morphs, distorts, all right, kind of turns into something else. All right, so we start with a rectangle and it kind of pulls apart or distorts, changes shape, and turns into something else, whatever that is. All right, so now in terms of the other 25 frames, for this to kind of come back to what it was, right? If we tried to unmorph this, all right, by using the selection tool and using the distortion property, it would be, I don't want to say impossible, but it would be nearly impossible to return that to its original order. So in a lot of animation, as we discussed in class, when something distorts or breaks apart, even though the video may show it as it coming back or starting from chaos and ending up as a real object, right, or as a composed object. Really, a lot of times, what happens is that in the cinematography or the animation of it is simply the object starts full, and the animator uh, breaks the object apart, and then just simply reverses the film so that it looks like from chaos comes order. But really, from a development side, we start with the object in order and and then slowly pull it into chaos. All right. So Flash allows us that capability. Flash, in terms of copying a particular keyframe, when we press the F6 key, we make a copy of the current keyframe, right? Well, here we can also copy entire rows of keyframes. All right. So I have 25 keyframes here. I want to select all of these keyframes, and I want to make another copy of them. All right, so to do that, I'll select frame number 1, and then if I shift left click on frame number 25, you'll see that all of my keyframes are selected. All right, they're highlighted in yellow. If I right click in that range and I copy frames, not cut, but copy, I go down here to the placeholder for frame 26, I select that, right click on frame 26, and I want to paste frames. Okay, so you can see basically what I've done. I have frames 1 through 25, and then frame 26 is frame 1 again. To reverse these frames, I will select the frames that I pasted, frames 26 through 50. All right, so same option. select frame 26, shift, left click frame 50, right click in that highlighted area, and then reverse the frames. Okay, so now all we did was we took that same sequence that we created from 1 to 25, made a new copy of it, and reversed the frames. So between frames 1 and 25, the object goes from organized to chaos, and then starting at frame 26, it's reversing what we just did. If we run just this one layer as a movie, Command Enter or Control Enter, all right, you'll see that we have created a loop style animation. A good loop style animation is simply an animation where the beginning and the end look similar, so that the viewer cannot necessarily tell where the video resets itself. So obviously in this particular case, the video is running from frame 1 to frame 50, about 2 seconds, a little bit more than 2 seconds. And then when it gets to frame 50, it cuts back to 1. All right, well, because frame 50 and frame 1 are basically the same frame, right, the same picture, it looks like a smooth loop. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with there. The second part of this then is we are going to create another object on another layer, so object number 2, and we are going to break it apart, again, using the selection tool and its capabilities. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and lock layer 1. And while I'm here, I might as well rename it. Okay, so I know that this is the object that gets distorted. So I'm just going to rename my layer Distort. You can name it whatever you want, object 1. My layer is locked. I don't want to hide it because I do want to see where on the stage this object goes. All right, so I can kind of set up the animation for the object that breaks apart in, kind of around it. All right, I don't necessarily want the two objects to interact with each other or appear to interact with each other. I'm going to add layer number 2. Okay. And this is going to be my breaking object, my object that breaks up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rename that. Now you'll notice one thing about Flash. When I add a second layer, it will automatically add the same number of frames that are in the previous frame. All right, so the distortion layer has 50 frames in it. So the breaking layer now has 50 frames in it. But however, what you'll see is that it has a single keyframe, all right, which is blank, right? It's not a black dot, but a white dot. And then a bunch of what these are called time frames. All right, so if I draw a background right now, that's fine. A time frame, what it does is, one of its purposes is to simply redisplay the last keyframe. All right, but in this particular case, I'm going to create an object and break it apart. So I don't want all those time frames to be in the way. So what I will do is I will delete, all right, I will select from frame 2 to frame 50. I will select that range of keyframes, and I'm going to get rid of them, remove frames. Okay. When I go back to frame number 1, all right, on the breaking layer, all right, I'm good to go. I'm ready to draw here. All right, so in this particular case, maybe I'll draw a circle and we'll break apart a circle or an oval or something like that. And I'll use a different color fill here so we can tell what's what. I'll go to my oval tool. All right, so remember the rectangle and the oval tools and the polystar tools are underneath each other. So I selected my oval tool, and I'm going to draw my oval over here so I can start to break that object apart. All right. The next thing that we'll do, all right, is I'll use my selection tool. I'll reposition my oval so it's just where I want it to be. Deselect the oval, and I will press F6. Okay. I have to make sure that the frame is selected before I press F6. All right, so I'll select the frame. You'll see it highlighted in yellow there, and then function F6, and we've created a new keyframe there. All right, so the distortion tool. All right, again, the selection tool works as a distortion tool. I'm going to drag a selection box. I'm going to start it from the outside of the object, pull it into the object, and I'll select just a little bit of it. All right, so the selection box, we can pull it in that like so, and we have created a object. The oval starts to break up. All right, so you can see what's happening here. Okay. One of the things with Flash is that if I press F6 right now on a second layer, if I press F6 right now, all right, it doesn't necessarily give me the next keyframe. The frame has to be selected on a second layer, all right, before I can press F6 to create a new keyframe. All right, so that's one of those Flash. They call it a feature. I call it a bug. All right, but if the object is selected or the frame is selected down here, all right, in yellow, or the object is selected up top, then when I press F6 or F6 for the Mac guys, then it'll give me a new keyframe. All right, it's just one of those Flash things that we have to deal with. All right, so again, I'll continue to break up my oval. All right, and again, subtle changes, small changes are good. All right, something is selected here, so it should give me a new keyframe, F6, there we go. All right, and off we go. We start to break this object apart slowly, small changes. All right, so this is what we have so far. All right, the other thing that you'll notice is that if I scrub this animation past the last frame of the breaking layer, once I get to frame 5, all right, so I have 4 frames in the animation, in the breaking animations layer. All right, as I get to frame 5, that disappears. All right, because there are no more frames to show up top in the breaking layer. Right, so there's always, it's always a good idea to make sure that all of your frames are the same length, and that there's content if you want it there. All right, for that for those that to display, for those objects to display. All right, so I'm back to frame 4. F6, right? Something is selected, F6. All right, and we continue the process of breaking this thing up. Okay, you don't have to watch me in detail break this thing up over the next 20 frames or so. Just remember the steps, right? We're going to drag a selection box into the object. We are going to reposition whatever we have selected. We're going to make sure that something is selected, and then we're going to hit the F6 key. All right, so we'll speed it up at this point. All right, there we go. So we have 25 frames, all right, of our oval breaking up over time. Okay, and just like we did before, so remember, right, once we get to frame 25 on the breaking apart layer, it disappears because we don't have any frames to continue. So just like we did with the distortion layer, at this point we want this oval to come back together. All right, obviously it would be impossible to, well, not impossible, but it would be very, very, very difficult to try to get this back together using the selection tool. So what we will do is we will simply copy the frames that we have, paste the frames that we have, and then reverse those frames. All right, so remember to select a range of frames, we're going to click on the first frame. We're going to shift, left click on the last frame. We see a highlighted area here. We're going to right click in that range. We are going to copy frames. We're going to go over to frame 26, which is our first blank frame, and we are going to paste frames. All right, so remember when we first paste them, they're pasted in order. So all we need to do now is reverse those frames that we just pasted. So again, I'm going to select that range, select frame 26, shift click all the way to frame 50. All right, or select frame 50. All right, right click in that area. All right, in that highlighted area, and we are going to reverse the frames. Okay, so where did we go here? Remove, insert. Oh, I lost my place. Here we go. Reverse frames. Okay. Turn that around. All right. So when we run this thing, all right, by hitting enter, you can see what we have so far. Okay. Both objects are working together. All right. They distort, break apart, and then come back to their original shape. If I hit Control Enter, MacGuy's Command Enter, we run this as a movie, and we have all of the more difficult bits of our animation created. All right, we're running this as a loop, and you can see that the beginning and the end of the animation are the same, so we get a nice looping structure. All right, we're going to save here. Last thing that we're going to do, yeah, go ahead and save, that's fine. Always a good idea to save. Save early, save often. Okay. Last thing we're going to do here is we're going to add a background. Background can be, whatever we want it to be. All right, so I'm going to lock my breaking layer. Okay, so my distortion layer is locked. My breaking layer is locked. All right, I can even hide those two layers if I want to, and I think I will, just so I can draw my my background. All right, without any interruptions. All right, to my site. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hide those layers, so you can hit the eyeball, and those two layers are hidden from sight. I'm going to go ahead and put my create a new layer. All right, down the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and name that layer. All right, BG for background. And while I'm here, I might as well just pull it down to the bottom so that it's the bottommost layer. I'm going to go ahead and draw my background. All right, and let's see here. In terms of a background, I think I'll do like some kind of a geometric pattern using rectangles. All right, so I'm going to create, let's see, some maybe orange colored rectangles. All right. And I want my rectangles to maybe, to be just start off stage and come down and just go, off stage a little bit. I want my frame to, my movie frame to kind of create those borders for me, so I don't have to worry about, these rectangles being the exact perfect shape or whatever. I'm going to make them kind of a little bit different. I don't want them too uniform. I want a little bit of a, not sure if rustic is the right word for it, all right, but I don't want a complete, structure here where everything is the same size and shape and that sort of thing. I want it to be a little bit different looking. All right, so I'll go this way, and then maybe I'll put in some rectangles that go the other way in a little bit different color. All right, maybe we'll make something green up here. All right, so we'll do something like this. All right, nice simple background. If I really wanted to, I could do this on two different layers and create like a crosshatch pattern, but we won't go crazy today with that. All right, so there's my background. All right, I want to make sure also that my name is on it. All right, so I'll go ahead and put that in. All right, I could put my name on a different layer if I wanted to, but for now I'll just put it right here. All right, let me make sure that I'm putting it in the right spot so that it doesn't get covered over. All right, so I'll put it down here. That's terrible. Let me redo that. I'm trying to draw with a mouse. Again, I want to make sure that my name is on stage. Very important. All right, I want to test it. Command Enter or Control Enter. Everything looks good. All right, we have an object that distorts, an object that breaks apart. We have a background, and we have a good looping animation structure where the beginning and the end of the movie is similar, so that it looks like it's one continuous movement. All right, that's it. Make sure you save your file, and when you submit to Blackboard, make sure that you are submitting not the SWF file, all right, but you are submitting the .fla file. Very important that you submit the project file so that I can see how you built your animation. All right, for more details, check out the instructions on Blackboard. And that's it for Project 2. See you next time.